Well, howdy guys and gals, welcome back to the Social Regressive. In a couple of recent challenges, we've taken the Bergara BXR out to see how it shoots out in the real world, and today we're going to take a look at its kind of parts and configuration instead. But first, I wanted to mention some things that I think would be of interest to you guys, especially that watched the previous videos, because there was a little bit of user error that went on my part, and I had no idea. Thanks to some of the folks that mentioned this in the comments, I did not realize that with 22s, it was a good idea to kind of cycle the same ammunition through it over and over before really figuring out what its accuracy was like, or before doing a precision challenge. I was kind of swapping around between different types of ammunition, willy-nilly, that's kind of how I do centerfire stuff. But it turns out that with rimfires, you can get much better performance if you use the same ammunition over and over. Like say you want to switch to another one, at least put another 10 rounds of it through there before you actually start testing it. And that actually does seem to have come true in this test. Based on those comments, I went out when I did the egg challenge, and I put a bunch of the SK Standard Plus ammo through this rifle. I didn't shoot anything but this in that challenge, and I took some kind of cider shots and played around before I actually did the challenge. And yes, it looks like it did tune the rifle up quite a bit. So I was leaving a lot of performance on the table with this. The accuracy was looking pretty darn good at 50 yards, but people were saying they were getting better groups out of whatever other rifle that they had. And it turns out that, yeah, it was being held back by me in some part. So this is shooting much better than I initially thought, and that was indicated right here. This is at 100 yards, and as I was trying to figure out how to hit the egg, because my drops were a little different than I thought and I was hitting grass, I took a couple shots to try to figure out where I was hitting, and then I took kind of a 3-shot group right here. That's one hit, that's two, through that one hole right there. And I think that with a better scope, I could have tightened this up even more. So here at 100 yards, we are at about 3/4 of an inch. That is just fantastic right there. And I know that this could shoot even tighter than that if I were to drop on something that had a higher magnification and had a good parallax adjustment. As you can see, here's one of the other notes that I'd like to throw out there. The build, as you see, is a little bit different from what you're typically going to see on especially a match 22. And I was treating this more like kind of a plinking rifle, something that could be used for multiple situations, like squirrel hunting. There are some things about this rifle that make it very flexible for a lot of situations, and we're going to delve into those here in a sec. But I put this US Optics TS8X on top of here so that I could be flexible in a bunch of different scenarios. And actually it worked out really well. This is something that you might consider for some of your builds that you want to use for a whole bunch of different stuff. Maybe you want a handy 22 that you can take out into the woods for squirrel and rabbit, and you want to be able to do some fun work at the range as well. This scope is a really good choice. First focal plane reticle, all milliradian based, and it has an 8x zoom ratio, so you can get all the way down to 1x if you're dealing with things at much closer distances, and then if you want to get more precision for those longer shots, you have 8x, and that's not bad at all. I think the way that we consider 22 rifles, we just think, okay, I'm going to slap a 1:4 on top, or some little low magnification scope. And we just kind of have this mindset of what we're going to put on top of there. And I think that a scope like this that everybody thinks of as an AR scope is actually a pretty cool way to go. Something to think about. Some other notes from testing. This Ruger BX25 mag, actually none of the BX25s that I had, seemed to work very well in this. And actually, I'm beginning to think that it wasn't so much about the magazine. After looking on the website for the rifle and actually kind of looking up some of its stats, this has a special chamber. It's called the Bentz chamber, and supposedly it supports match ammo. It likes really highfalutin stuff, and it doesn't so much like stingers or other high velocity types of ammo, things that are designed for more of your inexpensive rifles. And it says that it can cause misfeeds. It doesn't say that it's going to jam in the chamber or cause any issues, but it might not feed correctly. So I think that this is actually what we were running into. This might actually run the BX25s just fine. I know for a fact that it loves the Bergara magazine, which has a little bit closer tolerances. Everything's just kind of tighter all around on here. And it also likes the Ruger BX10. The BX10 ran in there just fine. And of course it's running the BX10 and the BX25 so well because, as we mentioned in some of the earlier videos, the BXR is a 1022 clone. I guess it's a licensed copy. And it takes a lot of the ideas of the 1022 and then fine-tunes them in all kinds of perfect little ways to be a rifle that is completely squared away out of the box. If you're looking for a semi-auto 22 that is extremely precise and seems to be well set up for that kind of vertical standing position that you get with silhouette, or if you want something that's going to flex into NRL 22, I think this is a very interesting one to look at. Yeah, you can spend all kinds of money and all kinds of time tuning up a 1022 to be exactly what you're after, swapping out the bolt, getting a different kind of barrel, swapping out trigger packs, coming up with a stock, and in the end you're going to have something that is very good and, you know, tweaked to your exact specifications. It's going to be pretty expensive and it's going to take a pretty fair amount of time as well. And this just has all of it squared away in one package, and we're going to take a look at all those parts and see what makes this tick. Let's start with the configuration controversy. I got some comments down below on some of my other videos saying that this was the wrong scope for this rifle. And yeah, like I say, I do have to disagree. I think this was a really good choice for something that can be flexible for a whole bunch of situations. And let me just take a minute to call out some of the things about this scope. First off, like I said, this is the US Optics TS8X. They also have a 6X if you want a little bit of a lower price tag and a lower overall zoom ratio. But at 8X, this has a massive zoom ratio, and you can quickly go from, like I say, you know, way up close to dealing with far off targets and doing it actually pretty precisely. Now, one of the issues that you're going to run into with an FFP reticle like this one that is milliradian based, I think it has about 10 milliradians all the way around, a little bit extra on the drop. This is a really cool reticle that works very well down at 1X because you do have some thicker stadia and you have that kind of central circle in the reticle that actually is illuminated. I need to point that out. Over here on this side, you have 6 different levels of illumination with off between each of them. So there's off, and then there is 5. And as you can see, it lights up the entire reticle. You have a kind of a thick crosshair with all those little stadia, and then you have that big circle that kind of goes around it. This helps at 1X, and here's what it looks like at 8X. You got to see this in the previous challenge. There it is right there. See how we have 10 milliradians, up, down, left, right. Okay, it kind of tops out at 6 up there, but you can get 10 up there. If you're zeroed, that doesn't really matter. You're not going to have to aim high on anything. But yeah, you can see that the reticle, yeah, it works at 8X here. It's a little bit on the thick side, so it's a little tough with the eggs. But if you're dealing with practical targets, and especially, you know, this was designed for the AR, so if you're dealing with more of your human-sized targets, this is going to work really well at any of these zoom ratios. So yeah, I'll give you guys a point on that one. This is not really designed for extreme precision. The Bushnell Match Pro would have been a better one. It's actually designed for NRL 22 and other precision sports. It's also a really good varmint scope, but I still think that this one is a good way to think for your 22s. The TS8X is sitting in 30mm worn rings, and I recommend these very much. These are lightweight, and they are machined to tolerances that are quite a bit better than some of the others out there. Some of these come out a little bit on the rough side, and these are just extremely smooth. They seem to have put quite a bit of work into lapping all of the surfaces, not just the inside ones, but the outside ones as well. So you really need to check out these rings. I think these are called the Mountain Tech. Just below those rings, we have the rail. This is a built-in Picatinny rail. This is not a separate piece. This is actually milled into the receiver itself. So there's one bit of confidence that you can have in this rifle. Things are not going to move. You don't have to worry about screws backing out. This is going to always remain stable. And check this out. Knowing that people like to take longer shots, this has 30 MOA of compensation built right into it. And that's on both models, the carbon and the steel one. So this is going to help with those longer distances. I didn't get this out past 100 yards in the testing that I've done so far with this, but this had no trouble at all. And of course, we're going to have a lot of adjustment range here on this scope. But if I had something that was a little bit tighter, maybe one of the old school target scopes, yeah, I would have no difficulty getting on target at some of the longer distances with that extra compensation. Moving down from the rail, we have the rest of the receiver. This is all aluminum, as you can imagine, and everything here just feels extra precise. It feels like they cut everything to a tighter tolerance, including the receiver, including the bolt inside here. Everything is cut tighter and sharper, and then they just barely lap the edges. And all of this feels extremely tight. All of this locks up really, really well. You don't have the slop, you don't have the wiggle. And all of this, even just to the finger, feels different than the parts you're going to get on a 1022. Even just the bolt knob right here. This just feels different. As I pull the bolt back, I don't feel any wiggle side to side. There's no changing of angle. All of this feels like it's riding just on these perfectly greased little rails. Big difference here between this and the 22. Of course, I love the 1022, but this just feels that extra bit precise. Here's the big deal coming off the front of the receiver. This is the carbon fiber barrel. Both this and the blued steel barrel are 16.5 inches long, and they are threaded at the muzzle. So if you want to run a suppressor, you can. And the protector that they have on here, this feels like it's aluminum on this model. It's probably steel on the steel one. But this actually holds really well onto here. This never tried to work itself off during my testing. And when it's time to remove it, doesn't take much effort. And that's going to protect the threads and the muzzle up there. It's going to protect that crown that's recessed down inside there. This lightweight barrel dissipates heat extremely quickly, as I found in my testing. That's just one of the great things about it. So this should be very consistent from string to string. But also it leads to a very lightweight package overall. Even with this nice stock and its butt pad extensions and all kinds of stuff, this comes in at 4.7 pounds. That is wonderfully light. Something that a kid in your house can use and you can use, and you're not going to get tired even if you are pointing this up into a tree for a while for a squirrel. While we're on the subject of that wonderful stock, let's take a look at some of the goodies. First off, this has kind of a pebbled texture to it. This is not going to slip and slide around like a lot of the plastic stocks that you're going to have out there. Each of these little splatters on here is three-dimensional. You can actually feel the texture on this, so it's going to grip the hand a little bit better. And overall, it's kind of a matte finish. So again, it's not a very slick plastic. This is texturized right through here on the fore end, so where your hand grips, you're going to get just a little bit of extra texture. Same thing on the grip right back here. And then coming back off the wrist, we have a high cheek piece right here. This is going to be great for your scopes. This one is riding just a little bit high right now because of just the size of the ocular bell right here. But a lot of your 22 target scopes, they're going to be able to sit a little bit lower, and it's going to be very easy to get your eye into it from the stock back here. Now, one of the cool party pieces that you see, these spacers can be very easily removed. Back here at the back, you have a couple of screw holes at the back of the butt pad, and when you loosen those up just a little bit, you can do this. You can actually see one of the screws hiding out inside there. When you loosen these, you can rotate out each of these butt pad spacers, and you can get a shorter length of pull overall. This, as it is configured at its full length, this is a little bit short for me. This was okay. This is 13 3/4 of an inch length of pull from the front of the trigger face out to the back of the butt pad. I prefer a 14.5 inch. I'm a taller guy, but for most folks, this is going to fit really well. And I'm sure that you can probably buy one or more of these spacers and swap out a screw. But yeah, 13 3/4 for your longest, and then you can crunch this down what looks to be about an extra 1.5 inches. So if you do have a smaller statured shooter, this is going to be pretty darn comfortable and configurable very quickly. If you decide you want to run a sling, you have a couple different options. You have the usual stud down here at the bottom, both at the rear and at the front. And then on each side of the front, so I can feel one over on this side as well, we have the QD sockets. And then at the back, we have QD sockets, one on each side as well. We have a lot of built-in options. This is wonderful. So if you're a lefty, if you're a righty, this is going to be very quickly configurable. The stock shape itself is a compromise, but it's a good one. I've run into some that didn't work for either, for prone shooting, for bench shooting, or for getting down and dirty and doing some quick offhand work. And this one actually, I think, can do both just fine. As you can see, we have kind of a thinner forearm. This is like a hunter style forearm. It's not huge like you're gonna get on some target stocks. It does kind of flatten out right under here. So you guys that do kind of fingertip style shooting in like silhouette matches, for example, you do have a decent amount of coverage. This is one where, okay, it's not going to be anything like an on-shoots where it's going to be much wider and you get a whole lot of fingertip connection. But as you saw in that challenge, I did pretty well on that. The grip is where we have our greatest compromise going on. This is kind of splitting the difference between your hunter style grip and your target style. So this is quite vertical. This is going to be pretty darn good if you're doing silhouette shooting or if you are in the prone or shooting from a bench. This is going to be pretty comfortable, as I found in my own testing. But if you want to take some of those standing shots, this does work as well. You can get your thumb up over the top here and you can have a semi-hunter style grip. Moving back, we do have that high cheek piece that I talked about, and down below we have an angled bag rider. This is not flat, this is not straight, but this will sit a bag pretty well. And then you have a hook right here. When I was doing my shooting in that last challenge, I did not use a rear bag, as you saw. I just got my hand on the hook and then touching my shoulder, and it felt very precise and very stable. Moving back to the butt pad material, this is kind of a 50%. This is a little bit on the squishy side, a little bit on the firm side. This is a 22, so you don't have to worry about absorbing recoil or anything, but it's a little grippy on the clothing. This is not one that wants to slide around. It does actually grab pretty well, and that may be a good thing or bad thing for you. I just want to let you know what that feels like. As you can see, the butt pad does have a little bit of a hook to it, so it will conform itself well to that shoulder pocket. Now for the controls. This is an area where the rifle really shines. This has a 3.5 pound pull on here, and it is very crisp. I know that you can get all kinds of triggers for your Rugers, and heck, if you wanted to swap over to another one on this, I'm sure it's totally possible, but I don't see why you'd really want to unless you have something very specific in mind. So the usual push through safety, and then as I come around here, I'm using my left hand. Okay, so I have just a tiny bit of take up right there, almost two-stage like. And yes, I do have a spent cartridge in there, so I'm not just dropping the firing pin on nothing. And that's it. Did you see how much over travel that was? Yeah, this is a really sweet trigger. Very quick reset, very short reset. This is one that if you needed to fire it very quickly and precisely, it's going to do both. In proper 10-22 fashion, this doesn't have a last round hold open, so when I pull back on this, okay, it's gonna pull that out, but then it's gonna try to go home again. If you do want to lock this back in usual 10-22 fashion, you have to use the little dongle under there. You have to use that funny little angled key, but this one works a little bit differently. Yes, you press this while you pull this back in order to hold it, so right now there it's being held back. But like some of the upgraded parts that you can get for 10-22s, if you just pull back on the charging latch and then let it go, you don't have to actually touch that again. This is kind of a one-way bolt stop right here. You only need to press it the one direction to make it stop, and you don't have to mess with it again, get it pushed up into that funky angle in order to get it to release. And as you can see, when I pulled this back manually, the ejection was very weak. That's not how this rifle works. Ejection has been perfect every time. I don't think I've had a single stoppage from that. I don't think I've had a failure to extract or eject. Both of those worked great. The only thing I ran into was a failure to feed. That was using the BX25 magazines, and like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, that was inexpensive ammo. I was using just regular old box ammo that you get at Walmart. So I don't think we can fault the gun in any way. I think it was just my ammo choice. The rifle comes with one Bergara stamped magazine. This is a little bit different. We're going to take a quick look at the mag, but to release it, you get this great big paddle. So you can hit it from either side, lefty or righty. You get quite a bit of meat right there. You can grab this and eject it. One thing that I noticed overall, and others have said the same thing out there that are testing this rifle, they said that the magazine was kind of tight to fit in there. The magazine well, I can feel at the back here, is a little narrow. So you're actually kind of scraping the magazine in and out. Not going to be the quickest change. If you wanted to tune that up, you could touch it with a file, perhaps, on the sides back here to open that up a little bit. This could be for precision to make sure that the magazine doesn't wobble around. This could help with the feeding and all that, which, like I said, does seem to be pristine. This magazine has some other precision things going on about it. This does not feel like the average BX10. This is a 10-round rotary magazine like you normally get. The follower looks very similar, but the feed lips are quite different. These feel almost like you could shave with them. It feels like they've, maybe toned down just a little bit. But when I first started loading this magazine up, it was actually quite difficult. It felt very kind of notchy. You can see that actual notch, that rail running right down through there. That's where the rim needs to go. And it felt like I had to angle things a certain way to get them in. And it felt like if I wasn't careful, I was going to cut my fingers. But eventually things started wearing in a little bit. It's much easier to load. I don't have those hiccups anymore. And it doesn't feel quite as sharp. This still does not quite feel like a BX10 though. This is something else. This trigger pack and housing is all plastic right here. You can see that it's actually pretty thick, so this can probably take a hit. Let's go ahead and take this rifle down. This uses a standard size Allen key. Oh, interesting, I like that. This screw is actually captured in the stock. This doesn't want to come out. I like that a lot. That means you're not going to lose this in the field. With the safety selector in the center position, I can lift out the whole action. There it is. So just one screw to take it out, just like the 1022. There's your trigger pack. I'm not going to take the action down completely. It's just going to look like a Ruger 1022 under there. And as you can see, when I pull the bolt back, that we have the usual guide rod, the single guide rod on that one side running through. This very well machined bolt that I talked about, how everything just feels very smooth, looks very smooth. This looks like it is titanium nitride coating, this kind of goldish color here. Maybe you guys have a better idea of what exactly this is. Whatever it is seems to be completely rust resistant. It seems to resist a lot of fouling. Like I can just take my finger, swipe it across there, and I'm removing all of the gunk. I have not cleaned this rifle yet. We have better propellants in 22 now. It seems like there's just a lot less buildup and a lot less crud, but people are making better rifles like that Savage A22 that we tested a while back, and they are not getting nearly as dirty as they used to. And one of the other reasons why this is running as clean as it is right now, I think, is because of the lubricant that I used. You guys know that I harp on the modern Spartan Systems oil, that I use it in my pistols, my rifles, and especially my ARs and other semi-autos. And I think, one of the first things that I did when I got this rifle is I applied that to it. And so far, I suspect that it is helping quite a bit with that cleanliness issue, with keeping gunk from really accumulating anywhere, and for keeping this running as well as it has. Like I say, no cleaning at all, and I haven't had any hiccups. This just continues to run as it should. That oil just rocks. There's the breech face, a little dirty, but not too bad. This looks like your usual 1022 breech face, but this does have that Bentz chamber, so remember that. This has fired a lot of the cheaper ammunition just fine, but then we also did have some issues with feeding, so make sure that you check your ammo before you go out in the field. MSRP on the BXR Carbon is $659, and of course it's going to be lower at the street price. Now I tried going around to see what prices were actually out there, but everybody's sold everything. Everything is flying off the shelves, so I can't really find a good price. Keep your eyes on the bots though once the election mess is over, and we'll see how much these are actually going for. Maybe you can find some right now. Good luck to you. But yeah, $659 MSRP for this, and then a lower price for the steel barreled model. And for that, in order to get the kind of quality that you're getting through here, a 1022 that you've swapped all the parts out, it's going to cost more than that. This is coming in at what I believe to be a pretty good bargain price. Once you include the carbon barrel, all of the precision that you get out of the bolt, and just how everything is just squared away a little bit extra. This would take quite a bit of time and money to turn a 1022 into this. This is a very capable and flexible rifle right out of the box, and a lot of people are going to dig that. There's some folks like me that like to deal with the frustration of putting together all the little parts and getting everything just the way that we want it. But then if you can buy it straight out of the box, that's actually pretty darn cool. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and especially hit the notification bell down below so you can know when new videos come out. We have some tests coming up on 22s, and we have some more centerfire stuff coming up. We're going to be doing some more with 243 Winchester, and we have a mystery cartridge that we're going to get into pretty soon here, and you are not going to want to miss it. I've already looked up some of the information on this, and I'm not only going to get to test it out at the range, but I'm going to get to test it on deer if all goes well. So yeah, don't miss a thing. Make sure you hit that notification bell. Thank you, patrons of the Destructive Arts, for making videos like these possible. You guys buy a lot of the ammunition that I use to test rifles like these around here. You guys are buying scopes and mounts and bipods and all kinds of stuff, and I appreciate every one of you. Thanks a lot. If anybody else wants to chip in $1 or $2 a month to keep tests like these coming, I'll put a link around here. But thank you especially to Sportsman's Guide, Stan and Mary, and Tyler at the 338 Lapua Magnum level. And then at the 300 Win Mag level, we have Howard, we have Joseph Davis, Peter, and Mr. No Name. And then, like I say, we have a bunch of other guys that are chipping in $1 or $2 a month. Well, thank you all very much. I hope you got something out of this. I'll see you guys around.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These 2 videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, the Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the Destructive Arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.